Yes.
On. Good afternoon. This is a Public Safety Subcommittee meeting scheduled for 5:30. Today is September 11. Happened to be a very sad day for our country. Although 17 years ago, still vivid, and I was fortunate to be taking part with Councillor Leahy and Fire Chief, and so many other interim superintendent of school at the Low High School this morning. I know the chief went to a couple places, not just the Low High School. Anyhow, I want to call this meeting to orders. The Public Safety Subcommittee, I want Mr. Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Chairman Wu?
Here.
Council Leahy?
Here.
Council Milanazzo?
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The agenda for today is updated on crime prevention in the city, given the facts that, we congratulate and be having the superintendent, the new superintendent, Superintendent Kelly with us. I want to, before I ask the superintendent to give us an update on crime prevention in the city, I want to also acknowledge my colleague, Councillor Malinazzo and Councillor Leahy. With us is also Councillor Mosia, as well as the acting Superintendent of School, Janine Durkin. She's with us as well. Chief of Police, Chief Richardson, and Chief of Fire, Chief Winwood. Chief, you could give us an update on, crime prevention in the city to date.
Certainly. We did a comparison from June and August of 2017 to June and August of 2018. During the time period that we just mentioned, CompStat crimes have decreased by 29% when compared to the same time period in 2017. All crime categories have declined, with the exception of shoplifting, which has increased 79% over a 3-month period and at 30% year-to-date. Crime has declined across all neighborhoods within the exception of Back Central Street, which increased 49%. 67% of that was vandalism, which meant 8 more incidents. Aggravated assaults increased 100%, which increased 6 more incidents from last year. Car breaks 100%, which increased 5 more incidents from last year. This appears to be driving the increase. The summer months have been problematic in the neighborhood. However, when looking at year-to-date, the Back Central neighborhood is showing a 5% increase. As far as the shots fired, discharge of firearms in the city, the number of shots fired incidents June to August 2018 increased by 13%, which means 2 more incidents than last year when compared to 2017. Incidents in 2018 differ from prior year as shootings appear to target specific people, with 5 victims being shot. In all these cases, the victim, suspect, and offenders are known to each other and all have gang or drug nexus. Whereas in 2017, incident shots fired appeared random in nature with no victims. 64 firearms have been recovered year to date. Gang-related incidents, gangs involving incidents June 1st to August 2018 have increased 10%, which means seven more incidents than last year when compared to the same time. The increase is due part to an increase of aggravated assaults, which is a 150% increase. That's 6 more incidents than last year, which are discussed above under shots fired, but more so from the increase of motor vehicle stops, 60% or 10 more incidents from last year conducted within identified hotspots. 48 suspected gang members or associates were arrested during this time period. So that kind of paints the picture that what we've been dealing with during the summer months. Obviously an increase we're not happy about. We've been watching the Back Central Street neighborhood. Myself and Captain LaRock have had many discussions about that, how we're going to address it. One of the things we plan on doing, or I actually already started doing, is that every day you'll see these traffic cars out in the city, whether they be on the connector or they be on the boulevard. They usually go to hotspot locations as far as accidents. So I decided to implement something a little bit different, as these vehicles or these cruisers are actually really don't receive any radio calls. We're in a lot of the hotspot locations, Sunnyvale, Back Central, Chelmsford Street area. It's a busy area, so the area cruiser receives a lot of calls. So we're planting these cruisers in these neighborhoods during the hotspot identified times to do traffic enforcement. Twofold, we have a presence in the neighborhood, and the second, if something major happens and the cruiser's tied up, we'll have someone right in that neighborhood. So we're kind of watching to see what the effect that's going to have for us in those neighborhoods. The other thing we also have done is, for many years now, we've had at least 2 cruisers that have plate readers on them. I believe this is a great tool that we don't use enough. Basically, these cruisers will be sent into these hotspot locations at the identified times and to do traffic enforcement also. And basically, these plate readers pick up any cars that come through the area that are unregistered, or if the owner has a warrant, you don't even have to stop the car. The alarm will go off and it'll pick the plate up right away. It also helps us as far as identifying cars that are in the area during certain incidences. If something were to happen at 5:30 at night and that cruiser was in a neighborhood and that car drove by them, we'd have the plate, we'd have the car, the time, and the location. So again, it's a great tool. I know a lot of people think that's an invasion on privacy, but when you're out moving around in a registered vehicle in a state or anywhere in this country, it's a fair game. It's a way for us to record what's happened. You have no expectation of privacy as you drive down the street. So I know some people get concerned about that, but I look at this as a tool to protect the people of the city and keep track of what's going on, and just hopefully it'll deter a lot of the criminal activity that's going on. There are other things that we're doing that I can't discuss publicly that I've started as chief. I'm committed to doing long-term investigations in this city and to try to deal with some of this gang activity. As I said many times, the shots fired are not going to go unanswered. We take those very seriously, and we're going to address them.
Thank you, Chief. Counsel
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you here as superintendent. Congratulations again. Can you touch upon staffing levels, where we are with the patrolmen? We're 200, 225. Where are we on staffing? And are we still looking at, I think you have the north sector and the south sector. The city's still divided into the sectors like it has been?
The city's split in 2 still. The Alpha sector, which is Pawtuckaville, Sunnyvale, downtown, the Acre, and then the Bravo sector is the Highlands, South Lowell, Belvedere. Captain Goldner had taken over my previous position I had before I was deputy as the Alpha sector, and Captain Dan LaRock has the Bravo sector. Both very capable people. As far as staffing level goes, I've only had this job 28 days, not that I'm counting, but that's one of my concerns. Obviously, I made a commitment to the people in the city to stay in the neighborhoods. I think it's very important. I know it worked well for me to be able to hear what people have to say. I was in the Pawtuckaville meeting last night. It was good to see them again, and I committed to them that we're going to have more of our newer officers go to these neighborhood meetings. You know, I know we talked about that in the past, but I think that that really needs to happen. I think it's important that the younger officers see what we do and why we do it and why that connection to the community is so important. As far as staffing, we have 14 young officers in the academy. I think we'll graduate November 1st, it's right around that area. Then they go into roughly a 14-week FTO program. So they'll be on the street, but they'll be with an officer, and they'll rotate through 3 different officers to kind of assess their weaknesses and strengths. I mean, you know, they go to the academy, but then to be out in the street and see how they deal with issues on the street is, I probably think, is more important than the academy. So we run a good FTO program. I think it's important. We're actually in discussions now about possibly doing the same with some of our new supervisors. I think it's not fair to them. Sometimes they walk into a new job and they don't have all the answers. So these are discussions I've been having since I've taken over. We have 9 openings right now. I'd love to fill them. There's been discussions about running a second academy during the year. Because again, for me to stick to my commitment of staying in the neighborhoods, I also committed to doing these long-term investigations, and I think that we're kind of short end as far as the investigative part goes. We have many officers in task force, which is great for us. We make those connections with the DEA and the FBI and state police. But I think that we still need to be able to address issues in the city, basically the drug issue is the big issue for me. So I'm looking at ways of trying to bring more, those 9 spots into the PD, whether it's to run the second academy, which is that could be a challenge for us, or to take more lateral transfers. We're currently looking at 3 right now. They appear to be good candidates. They're being, we have interviews set up, I think, for next week. So we might be able to knock off 3 of those positions and get us down to 6. But we're looking at, again, possibly throwing out a wider net to try to find good, solid candidates. Hopefully people that went to our police academy so that they know exactly what the Lowell Police Department's about, our community policing philosophy. And they'll be a good fit. Basically, they'll know the officers because they went to the academy with them. And I think that that's kind of where I'm aiming. I don't want to wait. I was telling someone earlier, I actually think it was you, I'm getting a little anxious. I want to run, but I really can't. I have to take my time, but I think summer's over, and usually with the cooler weather, things kind of slow down a little bit, but we're still going to be very active out there on the street. We're fortunate enough to have a very good connection. If you've been watching over the summer, a couple of things that we've done. The Massachusetts State Police has been a great friend of ours for many, many years, and they've committed to whatever we need. If you saw it during the Southeast Asian Water Festival, we want to make sure everybody had a good time. And the state police, I had a conversation with Lieutenant Dermot Quinn, and the Lieutenant Colonel couldn't have been more gracious. He said, whatever you guys need. And I just asked for a little help. Well, that night, the Friday night and the Saturday night, they brought in their command center. They had the helicopter up the entire night. They had numerous troopers in the city. And I think that, you know, we'll have access to that whenever we need it. And we're going to sporadically plug these people in on different weekends to kind of keep people off guard. But they understand the message, the troopers do. They understand that we're not here to harass any certain groups or like that, but we need to have a presence in these neighborhoods to let them know that we'll take whatever action is necessary to protect the people of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Leahy?
Thank you. Chief, I had a question, and I don't expect an answer right now, but so last Tuesday I was up at Saints Memorial. I had to go up there for something. So we had 3 police officers tied up because of a drunk person. What can we do for that? You know, I know this has been an issue anyway. It's not the first time, but you know, I was kind of amazed. There were a couple people there intoxicated, and I'm not sure who they were there for, but you know, there were 3 people there for a while. So anything we can do with security with the
That's a
hospitals?
significant draw on our resources, and it happens to us every weekend. You know, we lay out the best plans for the weekend and where we need to be and what we need to do. But the safety of the prisoners, obviously, is the priority. So a lot of them obviously know the game, that they'll go into the cell block. I have a backache, I have an earache, I have this, I have that. They have to be taken to the hospital. They have to be guarded. So that takes officers off the street.
Yeah.
And you can basically, every day, all 3 shifts, we get a shift brief from the commanding officer or the OIC who was in charge of that shift. And almost on every shift, there's police, 1 or 2 or 3 police officers at hospitals. Last weekend was out of control, which is we had so many prisons in the cell block that they all kind of, once one person does it, they all kind of, maybe I should do that. And they all end up at the hospital and take a lot of resources off the street for us. And the other officers who need to be doing the proactive stuff are tied up at the hospital, then the other officers in the cruisers end up answering all the calls. So the answer for that, I don't know. I know, many years we've had discussions about a regional lockup. That's something, if we could accomplish that somehow with the sheriff. I know that we can't keep pre-indicted or whatever, arraigned prisoners in the same building as inmates. Again, this is something we touched on many years ago when I was a captain. And I had heard that there was maybe a plan in effect, but that was a couple of years ago. So it's something that we've been discussing across the street there at 50 Arcane Drive about maybe we need to sit down with the sheriff again and see if there's any way we could do that. Because if we could ever get the sheriff's department, and maybe Councilor Mercy can help us to take some of these prisoners that have to stay the weekend because they're not bailable or whatever, that would free up our resources to do what we need to do in the neighborhoods and keep people safe.
Do you have to have one police officer per prisoner, or?
That's usually the way it goes, because again, you know what, our fear is that hospital staff will be assaulted. I know there's been concerns up at the General. We've had many conversations about that also, that, we have a strict policy that the prisoners will be searched before they're put into an ambulance at the station, or if they leave to go in an ambulance from a scene. Because we've had incidents where, and the nurse is right, they have a right to be afraid, that they basically end up in the emergency room with weapons on them. So we've stressed that over and over and over again to search, and we've usually find everything we need to find. But I think having one officer try to guard 3 people at the hospitals, I think that would be difficult.
Yeah.
So, unfortunate, but...
Yeah.
So it's
It's just unfortunate that it's a big drain on the patrol, so, thank you.
Thank you, John Leahy, Attorney Leahy, Councilor Leahy. Let me open to the public so that people in the audience can, have any question or comment for the chief. Anybody? Don't be shy. All right, great. Chief, you're well known in the community. People know you by your first name, and I was wondering what plans you have in terms of translate that into staff or patrolmen and or officer that walk the beat, and to make sure that the neighborhood that he or she patrol, that the neighborhood, the resident, know that individual by first name like they do with you. What plans you have to do that?
That's, I think that's very important. I think that in a city the size of ours and how we've worked so hard to get where we are right now, I think, first of all, to lead by example is very important, is what I try to do with any job that I've had here. And will obviously continue to do that as the superintendent. Last night at the Pawtuckaville meeting, the fire chief was with me, and we talked about, again, bringing more people into these meetings with us. And, I'm going to try to involve myself more into the lower levels of the organization. I actually have this thought, and people probably won't watch on TV right now, will be laughing, but it's very hard for me. I've already halfway through the captains, sitting down with them and kind of picking their brains on because I don't know all the answers to everything that's happening over there. I know a lot of them, but to actually hear for the captains, I want everybody, just not the captains, lieutenant, sergeant, patrolmen, I want everybody to be part of the solution here, not part of the problem. So I need to find a way to get to every single one of them. So one of my thoughts are, besides having the meetings and talking to them and conveying to them what I think is important, as far as our relationship with the community, huge. It's very important to us. And I think that I'm actually kicking around the idea of this academy class getting out, and I'm going to assign one of the newer officers, do it a week at a time, assigned to the chief's office. That's never happened here at LPD. And I do that for several things. I want them to know me. I want to get to know them. I want them to know my philosophy. I also want young officers to be able to see how everything works up in the chief's office. I want everything to be kind of open. And obviously there'll be some meetings that they might not be able to attend and consider if it's a sensitive investigation going on or whatever. But I think it would be good as a career builder for young officers to be able to come into the chief. I never made it to the chief's office until I was like 26 years old, or maybe once before that when I was in trouble. But when I was like 26 years old, I had 26 years on the job. But I think to have a young officer be able to come in and see how things work upstairs, I'm hoping it will spark some interest in them as far as advancing through the ranks of this organization. And hopefully there'll be kids that grew up in this city and provide opportunities that have been provided to me as far as, I never thought I'd ever make the chief here. I'm sitting here. But I've been very fortunate here, and I want to pass that on to the people that I work with.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Moussi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the superintendent, and again, congratulations. You truly deserve it. As we know in the city, we have a drug epidemic, unbelievable, and it's a major scourge on any population. But we're very fortunate in that someone in their wisdom put together a beautiful team called the Co-op team.
Superintendent Taylor.
Yeah, consisting of a police officer, Cheryl Mercier, firefighter Kevin Jones, Lowell House, Gianna. I know all the people because they share an office in the sheriff's office, and they go out in the street every day into the different shelter homes that people, tent city more or less, hidden along the banks of the river and whatever, and they try to save lives, and they do a magnificent job because I see this each and every day, and we're at the point where we have people that their name has spread this co-op program, so people are coming in to see these people because they're pleading with them, I need help, I realize I need help and I want to go to a detox center. So in the meantime, our co-op team takes their vehicle and actually brings to the available place that has a bed at a detox center, which obliterates the vital team from the street. So I'm pleading with anybody in the city or someone to come up with some sort of a vehicle that someone can man just for that particular reason, to take people to the detox center. And I'm not saying it's down the street. It could be in Bedford, it could be in Haverhill, it could be, and it ties up that team, takes a vehicle right off the street, and they could be doing other important things. So I'm wondering if somehow we could, and I know I'm asking for a lot, but we need that team, and we need a vehicle and a person to be that person that just drives the person, each one to the, transportation is a very serious issue. We have this factor and that factor and shortage of beds, but we do have a shortage of people for transportation. You think that perhaps there's a detox down the street and they can walk there. It's not as easy as that. People on drugs that want help, they don't have a way to get to Haverhill to a detox or an available place. They come to the co-op and they desperately need help. So I'm putting out that plea, if you know what I'm saying, if we can come to some type of a conclusion, because we have a vital team, but it's being taken off the street to do a very important job where it could be still doing the rest of the work. So I don't know that I explained it that well, but
No, you did. And we're at a critical point now. I mean, if we can't get them the treatment, then what's
It's
the
for
use?
nothing.
I mean, and
That's
that we're not
right.
going to arrest our way out of this. I know I talk about the increased enforcement, and I'm absolutely going to do that, because I think it's important that the dealers out in the street know that they're just not going to go unchecked. I mean, when I hear stories, and you were at the same meeting, that people are basically hanging out drugs in the city for free, so they can kind of get them hooked on it. So as we're trying to chase the people that are already sick and get them into treatment,
Right.
behind us are the people trying to get more people addicted to it, where they put fentanyl and marijuana, and our young kids who think it's safe to smoke marijuana all of a sudden get hooked on fentanyl or whatever, overdose, God forbid. So this is a critical point, but whatever I can do, I get the big picture, what we need to do. We're not going to arrest our way out of it. I know I've already provided a vehicle to the co-op people. I think the health department, we gave it to the health department, they're going to register it and insure it. Because again, if we're transporting people, we need to make sure that those vehicles are insured.
Anybody that's
I think the chief's gonna
dispensing
volunteer.
fentanyl, they're committing murder. They're murdering people.
Chief Winwood, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Counselor. Also, Counselor, Kevin Jones from the co-op team is working on developing a regional transportation program with some folks up in the Greater Lawrence area. So Laney Emons, the city's substance abuse coordinator, and I are working on drafting a letter asking for some support from the governor's office to develop this program and to fund a program. It could be a regional program, where there'd be a call-in center, and there'd be transportation for people that need to go to detox. So we're going to try to draft a letter and present it to the city manager, and then ask the city council to support this letter.
Resolution, we could do that.
So Laney and I are working on that, and we'll let you know as soon as we have that letter prepared.
I also would like to acknowledge joining us is Councilor Dave Conway and Mayor Samaras. Thank you. Chief, you mentioned the increase in more vehicle break-in in the back central area. That increase has been, what, you said 16%? And the way to deal with that, you indicated that traffic enforcement, and what else?
Traffic enforcement and then the plate readers in the neighborhoods, and obviously the officers on the bikes. I liked that tool to have the bikes in the neighborhood. I know when up in Sunnyvale, when I was a captain over there, we had an issue late at night with people walking through that neighborhood and getting into cars. And basically what we put a team of officers together. No one ever expects the 3 police officers to come riding down Beacon Street at 3 in the morning on bikes, and that's how basically we caught these kids. They never heard us coming. They'll hear the cruisers coming up the hill, you know, with the engine and so forth. They duck behind a tree. It's very hard for an officer to spot them. Another tool I'm looking at, depending on funding, is purchasing another canine. I think with the young officers that we have on the late shift who have been doing a fabulous job, this crew of individuals, I couldn't be prouder of them. They're doing a tremendous job. The whole department does. But to watch the younger officers on that late night shift is pretty impressive. And I thought that using funds from the Law Enforcement Trust Fund that wouldn't come out of the taxpayers' money, and we're kind of researching now, can we pay the medical bills with that? Can we pay the, you know, the kennel and all that stuff? I want to try to make this as cost effective as possible. But I think having a tool like that, when we go into the neighborhoods at night, and I talked to some of the supervisors on that shift that have been some foot pursuits. These younger officers are obviously capable of running. They're still young, not like me. But the dog would be a great tool, and believe it, it's a deterrence. When people know that there's a dog in the neighborhood, that the police officer is going to show up with a dog, that kind of has an effect, because they know the dog's going to do whatever it has to do to catch them. And so I think just keeping the patrols up there, doing the traffic enforcement, visibility is important. But again, this is all pushed by the drug issue. You know, they're walking around the neighborhoods and they're sick, and they're looking for whatever change they can grab out of a car, whatever they can do. And it's been an increase in that particular neighborhood, especially on Back Central Street.
I realize that you only been in the job 28 days, as you indicated. The implementation that you indicated with regard to addressing that motor vehicle break-in in Back Central or anywhere else in the city, what result did you find thus far, if any?
As far as an increase or decrease?
Yeah, as far as a positive response to it, meaning that it cut back in terms of that break-in, the car break-in, and or those issues that you indicated with regard to Back Central.
Well, I've yet to meet with the residents of the Back Central Street area, so it's kind of hard for me to answer that. I know the numbers are kind of steady right now. They are up, but this is I'm committed to attending all the neighborhood meetings within the month. I know I have Jackson, Appleton, I think that's tomorrow night. I went to Pawtuckaville last night. So my goal is to attend every meeting I can this month, to get out there, to hear what the people have to say, to see what their concerns are, to be able to make suggestions on them to how to protect themselves and protect their property, like we've done so many times. And then my goal would be after that, unless there's a flare-up, like you always want to go to the neighborhood that you want to hear from the most, like if there's something going on in the acre. But 2 or 3 meetings a month at least I will attend. I'm not going to go once a year and listen to what everybody has to say and then disappear for 11 months. I'm definitely going to be, I committed to being accessible, and because I really need to hear what's going on in the neighborhood. Some people might not be reporting their cars being broken into. And that happens a lot because, oh, it's my fault I left it open. No, it's not your fault. But there could be even more car breaks than we even know. So I think it's important that but I need to get people to come to the meetings. I say this over and over again. It's like I always hear from the same people, but there's people out there that are being affected by crime in the city, and it's important that I hear from them. It's important that we all hear from them and get a clear picture of what's going on.
Thank you, Chief. Go. That said, I want to also announce, since you mentioned about reaching out to the communities, I know that the manager have scheduled a date so that you will go down and meet and greet with resident of Lowell. I believe it was on the 18th of this month at Senior Center. I believe it's at 6:30 or somewhere around there.
Yes.
And I would urge you through your department, I'm sure I'll do the same with the manager offices, to make a concerted effort to try to reach out to all the nonprofit organizations, try to get as many people. I know that the director of CBA is here, Young Shu. She will do her part, and I'm sure others will do the same. That we have people come to this meet and greet with you. It's a beginning of a great relationship down the road. So if we could have not only that, but also have translator either in Spanish or in Khmer at the meeting, that would be great. So those who listen to or tune into this meeting, that the meet and greet with the chief is going to be on September 18 at 6:30 at the Senior Center. So hosted by the city manager office and the chief Richardson. That said, is there any other things that council, anything else? Well, we can go to the next issues on the agenda then. Thank you, Chief. Chief, you will remain to be here. Please remain here. Before I announce the next item on the agenda, emergency management plan, I want to also acknowledge Chris Ryder, a president of the fire local union, who's also present as well. So thank you for coming. Chief Winwood, maybe I can start with you. If you give us an update on that emergency management plan that you have. I believe you have give us a handout on that as well. So you go ahead, sir.
Sure, thank you, Councilor. So in addition to being the fire chief, I'm the emergency management director for the city, and I have two deputy directors, George Rose and Paul LaChance. And we work very closely with all the department heads in the city and all the different city workers to plan for, we basically plan for the worst and hope for the best. So what we do is we plan for large disasters, man-made or natural disasters. We're entering hurricane season right now, and unfortunately there's a very big destructive hurricane heading for the Carolinas right now, so we're keeping a close eye on that, and there are several other hurricanes behind it. Fortunately, we're not in the bullseye right now, but we do plan for flooding events both during hurricane season and in the springtime when we have the big snow melts. We plan for large fires, any kind of a natural disaster, and we also plan for pre-planned events such as the Folk Festival. We just had a very successful and safe Folk Festival. We have the Kinetics race coming up. We have the Bay State Marathon. We have a big crew regatta, the Texel River Regatta coming up on the Merrimack River. We plan for events all year long, and George and Paul do a great job planning these big events. And in addition to that, George and Paul have been working on this, what's called a SEMP plan. It's a pretty big plan. It's a 95-page document. So I gave you a copy of the table of contents and just a brief introduction. So MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, has a comprehensive emergency management plan for the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And they've instructed each community to develop their own comprehensive emergency management plan. So we're in the process of doing that. And what it does is it lays a blueprint for us to manage any of these large incidents that may occur. And there's also 16 functions that I'll go over in a minute. They're called ESF functions. So basically what the Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan is, as you can see in your handout, what it does is it minimizes injury and loss of life in case of a big disaster, minimizes property damage, it minimizes adverse environmental and economic impact, it provides for the immediate needs of disaster victims. One thing we do here in the city is if we have a big fire, a flood, a very cold period, we'll open up a shelter over at the Senior Center. We work closely with Michelle Romalo over there, and we'll put people up on a temporary basis. And if we had to open up a bigger shelter, we could look at the high school or even the Tsongas Center if we had to. Another thing we would do is restore essential utilities and functions. I know that's one of the big problems down in Puerto Rico they've had with restoring electricity. That's one of the main functions of our plan. We would establish operational area-wide resource coordination and management operations. We have a very good mutual aid system here in the fire department, and I'm sure Superintendent Richardson has a very good plan as well. So we have what's called a 10-alarm run card, where we have pre-planned what fire companies around the greater Lowell area will come into the city in case of a very big fire or a very big disaster. We work very closely with the Massachusetts Emergency Management Association, and they have a regional office over in Tewksbury. And we work very closely with Mike Main over there. He's the manager of the regional office. Heather Teshi, she comes up to Lowell every year for the Folk Festival and kind of coordinates some of the different agencies that come into the city to help protect the folks during our big events. We also provide timely and accurate information to the public regarding emergency actions. We have a Civic Ready system where when people sign up, we can notify them if there's a hurricane or a tornado or a major gas leak or a major fire in the city. We use social media, we use Facebook, we use Twitter to pump out information to the public in case there's any kind of an emergency in the city. We work very closely together with the manager's office and with the police superintendent to put out press releases and to make sure that we're all on the same page when we give out information to the public. And the other thing we do is oversee disaster management across throughout impacted areas in conjunction with other regional, state, and federal agencies, as well as the private sector. Like I said, we'll bring in other fire departments to help out, other police departments. The plan we had for the Folk Festival, we brought in folks from the National Guard, the State Police, MEMA, Trinity Ambulance, Lowell General Paramedics. The Middlesex Sheriff's Office came in to support the police after hours. We had a very big team from all over the area that helped keep the city safe, and we had the weather cooperated with us this year, so we had a very good weekend, a very safe weekend. So as I mentioned, we're also planning for some planned events that are coming up. The first one is the Kinetics race that's coming up on Saturday, September 22nd, and our emergency management team is putting together a plan. We have a communications vehicle, Fieldcom 60, that we'll deploy, and what it does is it allows the different agencies from fire, police, EMS, to communicate with each other. We all have different radio frequencies. And this truck, one of our deputy chiefs runs the truck, Phil Sharon, and he can patch together the different radio frequencies so that we can all be on the same page in case of an emergency. We'll work with the police department for road closures. This race, it encompasses a big part of the city. So the police will be closing some of the roads. We'll work with EMS, with Trinity, with Lowell General Paramedics, in case there are any medical emergencies. We'll deploy our fire department dive team out on the river. Part of the race is going to involve some of these homemade bike/boat type machines, and some of them aren't completely safe, so we'll have our dive team in the river just in case anyone has any kind of a problem. Another thing we're preparing for is the Textile River Regatta. It's a big crew race involving both colleges and high schools out on the Merrimack River. And about 3 years ago, we had a big windstorm come in, and these boats are very low. So we had a lot of boats that were getting swamped with water, and we had some young kids in the water, and it became a big challenge to get them off the water safely. So again, we'll deploy our dive team for that race, and we'll also have some of the city lifeguards out on the river, and the regatta people will have some boats out there as well to help assist if there are any issues with the kids out on the river. We'll also deploy our communications vehicle for that event, and we'll work with Lowell PD, UMass Lowell PD, and UMass EMS, as well as Trinity and Lowell General Paramedics, in case there are any medical emergencies. And then another event we're working on is coming up later on in October, the Bay State Marathon. The Bay State Marathon originates in Lowell, and it goes into Chelmsford and Tingsboro, and it's become the second biggest marathon in the Commonwealth, and I believe there's about 4,000 or 5,000 runners. So there's some challenges with that, where it's spread out over multiple communities. Again, we'll have our emergency management people coordinating our public safety efforts. We'll have our communications vehicle. We'll be working with EMS teams from the fire department, from Trinity, from Lowell General. Especially if it's a hot day, we have a lot of medical emergencies, and we're prepared for any other kind of medical emergencies. MEMA will be sending their portable EOC, which we had up here for the Folk Festival, and we'll set it up, and we'll be able to use it as a mobile command post to kind of manage all the different public safety agencies that are in the city. Again, we'll have the CST team from the National Guard up to make sure that there are no suspicious devices in the area. We'll be working with the Lowell PD, Middlesex Sheriff's Office, and UMass PD to secure all the streets. And we'll have 3 medical groups set up, one down at the Tsongas Center, one out at the out on Pawtucket Boulevard by the bowling alley, and then we'll have a mobile group in case we have any medical emergencies along the course. So George and Paul are staying very busy in the emergency management office, planning for any big events, both natural, man-made, as well as pre-planned events. So that's kind of a summary of the SEMP plan and some of the emergency plans we're working on.
Thank you, Chief. Before I turn to Councilor Malinazzo, also acknowledge Councilor Ronnie Elliott is also with us as well. And I thought I saw Councilor Cirillo, but she's not here. Councilor Malinazzo, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. You mentioned Councilor Cirillo. I believe we just got a notice that there's a neighborhood meeting in Centerville that Councilor Cirillo is chairing. I think it's next Monday,
right.
And it's about public safety, so I'm sure that you all will be there. Yes. Okay, yes. In any event, my question, my question to the fire chief, and thank you for being here. What's the timing of the emergency management plan for it to be completed? I know we have a table of contents, and is that something that you'll be putting up on the city's website? And then my follow-up question has to do with equipment needs. As we're looking at some of these new buildings that are being built around the city, the Hamilton Canal, the courthouse is 11 stories or whatever it is. I mean, do we have the equipment that you all need as the fire department in order to make sure that we can service any emergencies? I know that obviously the building codes have changed and the sprinkler systems in these buildings and so forth, but just to make sure that you have the tools that you need in order to keep up with all of the expansion that's happening in the city.
Sure. Well, we were fortunate enough to recently get a big AFG grant, as you know. We'll be replacing our breathing apparatus and our turnout gear. Our trucks are another story. We have been fortunate enough to get an AFG grant last year where we were able to purchase 2 new trucks. But we have, our fleet is getting very old and our trucks are getting tired. So they're breaking down quite frequently, and it's costing a lot of money to repair them. And we've had trucks out of service a lot the last couple of years because of the age of some of our older trucks. So as time goes on, we'll be asking for funding to purchase more trucks, and we'll be applying for the AFG grants as well. Okay. As far as for the planned events, we do have 3 golf carts that we use for EMS purposes in the city. We have 3 boats that we use to make rescues on the river. And we just got a donation from the Digital Credit Union, and we're going to be purchasing 2 new boats. We just purchased 2 new motors for our boats, so we'll be in pretty good shape on the water. A lot of the resources that we bring in for the pre-planned events come from other agencies, from MEMA, from the State Police, from the National Guard. They come in and help out and supplement us as well. But I would say our biggest challenge in moving forward would be our trucks and our fleet.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Chief, Councilor Malinazzo, question regarding the timing of the completion of this management plan. You have not responded to that.
Sure, it's going to take a while. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in department heads from each department in the city, and we're going to try to get input from each of them. So, I would guess it's going to take a number of months, maybe 6 months or so. But we do have other plans in place, and we do have an older SEMP plan, but this is an updated version. This is a template that the state put out so that each community is kind of on the same page. So I would say, 6 months might be a good estimate.
Chief, with this plan, the plan that you have in place, although it may not be that comprehensive, how do you communicate that plans to the resident or the public? Say, for example, the hurricane that just missed us, and there may be a flood in the event, an alternative to that. How do you communicate that plans to the residents, say, Pawtuckettville or
Sure.
those areas?
It's tricky. We have to find a balance. Some of the information we don't want to share with the public, but yet we want to get out emergency information. And I know the superintendent mentioned last night we went to the Pawtuckettville Citizens Council meeting, and attending these meetings, we can pump out some information about how to develop a plan, how to make sure that you have drinking water, non-perishable foods if there's a hurricane coming, gasoline in your car and your gas cans. We can push out information at these neighborhood meetings. We also like to use Twitter and Facebook quite a bit. We also retweet messages from MEMA and FEMA. They're always putting out messages when there's a hurricane coming, how to prepare. We do have the Civic Ready system where we can it's similar to a reverse 911 system. MEMA also has a system. The city's system, people have to sign up for it. If they don't sign up for it, then we don't reach them when we pump out information. MEMA has a system where if we have a big emergency, we can pump out information to every cell phone in the city if we call up our partners at MEMA. And that's a little bit more extensive system where we can get out information in case there's an emergency. And we also have a website, a link on the city website, where we can put out any information. You know, there's going to be a shelter set up, we'll advertise that. We use the local media, we use the Lowell Sun, we use WCAP. We'll send out emails to the city. We'll usually email, I see Anne Marie Page is here tonight. We'll usually send out an email to Anne Marie, and she'll notify all the neighborhood groups. So we try to pump out some information from different methods, but there's also some of the information in the plan that we don't want to share with the public, just for security reasons.
Thank you, Chief. Little question. Anne Marie Page?
Thank you very much. My name is Anne Marie Page. I'm the president of Centerville Neighborhood Action Group and Citywide Neighborhood Council, and I do have a question. I'd like to know who is responsible for, okay, here's the problem. I'm drive down 3rd Street, I get to 3rd and Reed. I'm looking at a 6-family wooden structure. You don't like those. And all piled up against it, right against the building, we have mattress and any other little piece of furniture you would like to redo your house, leaning there. So I drove down to the precinct and went in to the police, who came to the rescue. That's why Kelly is smiling. And I said, help, you've got to get the mattresses and the furniture off a 6-family wooden structure, 3 stories high, or we're all going to have a bad weekend. And they did it. I don't know how they did it or who did it or what. We also have one on 6th Street that I think plans on spending the winter. But something scares me when I see a mattress leaning against a multi-family wooden structure. So I would like to know who should be handling that. I mean, do the police call the fire? Does somebody call fire prevention? Who should you call on something like that? Because it has to happen soon. Thank you very much. We appreciate all they do for us. These are our heroes. You got 2 of the best ones here.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Rita has a...
Anne Marie.
Councilor Mercia.
I would call UTEC. They pick up mattresses.
UTEC?
UTEC.
No, I know about UTEC. Do they charge or do
No,
they just
they
come?
don't charge.
Okay, so that takes care of my
They'll
mattress.
pick it right up.
What about the other 5 or 6 pieces of furniture that are still even on that? Yes, Chief?
Councilor Mercia, I think UTEC charge $15 per mattress.
Oh, they
that ain't
do?
gonna
They
happen.
didn't used to.
They do.
They do
has
now?
always been- yeah,
Oh, I
they
did
do.
not-
Yeah.
They do now, that's
they
why
do
I
now.
didn't.
They've done it before too. So Chief Winwood just raised his hand, and he's probably volunteered to do that.
Sure, Anne Marie, I know you've called my office in the past, and feel free to call my office. We can send out a fire prevention inspector, and we work with the health inspector.
Right.
We'll make sure that any debris up against the building is a fire hazard. We don't want it there at all.
No, it's scary. When you see furniture and trash and mattresses leaning against multi-family wooden structure, that'll scare you.
Sure, we'll fine the landlord if they don't remove the debris.
But they did it. It was gone in no time. I don't know where it went, but it went away.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
run into this situation quite often, especially when people,
Right.
when
Oh,
people,
yes.
when people are moving out of multifamily buildings. So it's important that we get trash removed when it's leaning up against a wooden structure.
You're right. In Centerville, our mattresses multiply like rabbits. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Thank you, Chief Winwood. If there's no other comment on this topic, next topic has to do with canvassing or solicitation in the city. I think this has come out from Pawtuckaville. I think it happened not just Pawtuckaville, in other area too, where you have people marketing on, let's say, a electrical thing similar to National Grid, like, you know.
Exactly, yes.
Those things. So do you have any answers to that, Chief?
This has been an issue for us across the city. You know, it starts up, it goes away, it comes back, and the problem is that some pull the proper permits that they need to have, but the aggressive tactics that they're taking as far as trying to get people to buy things is very intimidating to the elderly in the city. And that's how usually we get involved. If they don't have the permits, we move them along. It's a problem. I haven't really heard of any complaints of recent, but I know that at the beginning of some of the, we're dealing with this issue. But we continue to stay on it. You know, the officers have been instructed basically if they see people in the neighborhood, even before they call, to make sure that they stop, you know, ask them what their business is, why you're in the neighborhood, what can we do for you, and make sure they have the proper paperwork that they need to have. But it's the aggressive tactics, whoever are running these businesses, are having these young adults, be a little too forward, in my opinion, and it's intimidating, like I said.
My understanding that they have to pull the permit with the city, from the city, right? To have that permit in order to do, to go door to door and selling or marketing for whatever that marketing be. So in the event that a person going to pull a permit and say Joan went to pull the permit, but not Joan who went to the door, it's somebody else who used Joan's permit, how do you address that issue?
That's a good question. I know that some permits are pulled from the PD, and I think some are from the clerk's office. I'm not sure if they have to have pictures on them or not. I have not dug that deep down into that yet to find that out, but that's a very good question. I could go in and get a permit. I'm all squared away, and then I give it to someone that might have some issues and might not present themselves the way they should. But I'd have to go back and check with the street sergeants and see exactly how we're dealing with that. It's the first I've heard of it, actually, people swapping hands with them, but that's good to know. Again, the communication part and being able to talk to people and know about it, it's a good thing.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Councilor Zarello.
Hi, yes. I think that that's a great thing. If they do have pictures, you take pictures and that you keep them with the permits. Is that something that we do in the city?
I don't think so. I'm not sure. Again, I'd have to check. Mike, I know that we probably have the ability to do it, or we go with the police department, but
We don't have the ability to take the picture and put it on a permit. We take a copy of their license, or some
Okay.
type of
Okay.
picture ID, and we attach
All
it to the
right.
application. The
Okay.
process is they come in, the individual comes in, they present the license, we take the application and we send it over to the police department to do a query on them.
Yep.
If it comes back clean, we take that application back, and then we forward that application to the law department with the bond that they have to supply, a $1,000 surety bond to the city of Lowell. If that bond comes back, approved by the law department, we issue that license, and at that point, they're legal to go out in the street, door to door. But I think as the superintendent has alluded to and stated quite correctly, that the problem is aggressive salesmanship here, really.
Right.
I mean, if he doesn't have a permit, then obviously he's in violation of one of our ordinances, and
Right.
but the aggressive salesmanship of some of these that we hear, I mean, that's a category or an area that really has to delve into, and other areas there, but the process is they need a permit to go out there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Councilor Zarello. Chief, you anything to add on that?
sorry, what?
Do you have anything else to add on that topic?
Do I have any other thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Well, basically, I'm going to go back and talk to Detective Matos and see exactly what our procedures. I didn't know about the license part. I think that's a good thing. But maybe we can look at the possibility, if we take pictures, that could help the officers identify exactly who they're talking to at the time. A lot of times, as we know from kids, you know, they end up swapping licenses and they kind of pretty much look alike. But I think having an actual picture of the person could benefit us. So I will definitely check into that with Jim Matos in the morning.
Thank you, Chief. Well, that said,
Yeah, all set.
then all set. I'm entertaining motions to adjourn.
I entertain, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the report from the, I'm sorry.
Hang on a minute, Councilor Malinazzo. Councilor Zarello.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say also that the subcommittee, the neighborhood subcommittee, the agenda, what's on the agenda is neighborhood safety, which is not going to interfere with this. I just wanted to say that added to this is that I've requested that, police officers be there to talk about how the neighborhoods can be more aware and the things that they can do to be safe. And I think that will help aid with all these other issues. So I'm really excited about the neighborhood subcommittee meeting. It's Monday, the 17th at 6:30 at Don Polsky. It's going to be during the Centerville subcommittee meeting. So I think that it will be a nice added thing to work with the city as far as, what the neighborhoods can do to be safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cirillo. I want to thank Chief Richardson and Chief Winwood for being here. Thank you very much. Let me just motions to accept this report of progress.
Yes, so moved.
All right, Mr. Clerk, call the roll. Yeah. Here, yes.
Yes.
Thank
Motion
you.
to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Second.